everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name's Rachel and this is Stitched Up. You're a little bit wonky, I've just realised, but anyway, today's vlog is my turn to do the So Frugal 23 challenge, and I wasn't going to take part in it this year as a vlogger, and the reason for that is obviously, as lots of you already know, my daughter is imminently due to give birth and I didn't want to commit to a day, but I have been able to make something, which is what I'm wearing, and chat to you a little bit. Oh, here's Piper, look. Hello. Chat to you a little bit about what I've made and what fabric I've used. And I had a chat with Ruan, and yeah, basically I'm here to tell you all about my project for this challenge in March. So I'm sure lots of you already know all about this challenge. It is in its third year and it's run by the lovely Sam, who is Frugalissima, and Ruan, who is the Yorkshire Sew Girl. And essentially it's a challenge where you choose a pattern that is free to anybody. So it can be something you've drafted yourself, it can be a pattern that you found online, and choose some fabric that you've already got in your stash and make something that is free. It has to be a garment, it can't be an accessory or like a dog coat or something like that. It has to be a garment for a person to wear, and it's a really good opportunity to raid your stash, look at some of the free patterns that are out there, and yeah, sew up yourself something new. So this is the third year that I've taken part in this challenge, and I really love it because I really love the chance to be able to just looking at his wagging tail, I'm really sorry. I really love the opportunity to look at what the other vloggers that always take part in this challenge have found. There's so much inspiration out there, and I have been following all the vloggers so far this year in March, and it's just been incredible, absolutely incredible. There are absolutely tons of prizes this year as well, and yeah, it's just incredible. So I'm sure you've heard all about it, so we'll just get into what I have sewn. So I've been watching some of the vlogs that other vloggers on the vlog tour have put out during the month of March, and there's been quite a few people that have mentioned Tiana's Closet. Now I will link to it down in the comments below if you haven't already seen it, but essentially this is a website where you can go to, and she puts up lots of free patterns for lots of different tops and dresses and things, shorts. There were shorts on there, there was all sorts, and they're all free to download, print off and make up yourself. And one of the garments that is on there that I loved when I saw it is the Karen top. Now I'll put a picture of it up here, but it's essentially just a very simple blouse with a ruffle detail on the neck, little flutter sleeves, and it has a loop fastening with a keyhole detail at the back. And I really like this top. So my plan for So Frugal this year was to make this top, because I thought, we're heading into spring, it's just going to be perfect. It's really my style, and I can wear it casually, I can wear it for work as well, and I thought, I will get loads of wear out of it. So I printed the pattern off and had a look at it. Now, one of the issues I had is that on the website, on Tiana's Closet, it does say that this is a layered PDF that you can obviously choose the size you want to make and just print off that size. Now, when I clicked on the download and downloaded it to my MacBook into Adobe, it wasn't coming up as a layered PDF, and the layers just weren't there at all. So I had to print off the entire PDF. And unfortunately, all the sizes have the same lines on them. So when you've got another pattern, for instance, and the different sizes will have different types of solid lines and dashed and dots and all that kind of thing to indicate the differences between each size. Unfortunately, this doesn't. It's all solid lines for every size. And not only that, but there's also the stitching line as well as the seam allowance line on there as well. So all in all, there are 12 lines for 6 different sizes on this top. And try as I might, when I was trying to cut this out to cut the size that I needed, I just could not, I just couldn't do it, basically. It was too confusing. So I reverted to plan B, which was drafting my own version slightly different, but drafting my own version of this top. So this takes me back to summer last year, which I've actually never really talked about on my channel, but I decided last year that I wanted to make my own block for my own personal body. And you know, it is, I think, you know, when you're learning to sew, it's one of those things when you do a lot of research that the absolute best way of making a garment to fit you is by drafting your own from your own bodice block. But I think I'd been intimidated previously to create my own bodice sloper because it just looked so complicated. But anyway, I spent some time last summer making my own bodice sloper, and then didn't really do much else because I have done so much reading and so much research, and there are so many resources out there for creating your own slopers, but actually not really much that gives you that next step, as in how to actually create something from your sloper, you know, where you need to add ease and where design lines need to be and all that kind of thing, and just coming up with ideas really. So it sort of got pushed to one side, and it was something that I thought I'm going to come back to it at some point and start having a go, but I haven't done. So anyway, that leads me to where we are now, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to drag out that body sloper and I'm going to have a go at making my own Karen top, or my version of the Karen top, which is exactly what I'm wearing here. So this top is my toile. I'll stand up so you can see it. Essentially what I have created from my body sloper is a little ruffle necked top with a front yoke gathering into the front yoke, little fluted cap sleeve flouncy things, whatever you want to call it, and then the back just has a little hook and eye with a little slit. No, it doesn't have a hook and eye at all. It has a button and rouleau loop closure with obviously a little slit to get it on over my head. As I say, this is a wearable toile because if I just untuck it, you will see it is quite short on me. So I've got mid-rise jeans on with this at the moment. I can just tuck the top into the front of my jeans, and I think it looks really cute. This fabric is actually a old duvet cover that I picked up from a charity shop a couple of years ago. It was just bought with the intention of using it as toile fabric. So I thought it would be great to actually use this to make a little top and see how it fits. So I'm going to show you the process of how I actually drafted this from my sloper. You will see that I've made this top first, and then what I've done is I've actually made another top out of stash fabric, which was actually a remnant that I picked up from the Izzo Sews social back a couple of months ago. I think it was January time, the end of January, something like that. I picked up a little remnant of cotton lawn, and I thought I knew what changes I needed to make to this toile, which really all I needed to do was lengthen it more because it's just a little bit too cropped. And yeah, went ahead and made a second version. So I'm going to show you the process now, and then I will come on at the end with the finished top to show you my second version. So I'm starting off by tracing off my front bodice block, as you can see, and I'm marking the dart points, the dart legs, and drawing in the side and the waist dart. And then what I'm going to do first is I'm going to just extend the shoulder by 1/2 inch to create a little bit of ease at the shoulder, and I am bringing in the neck point and the shoulder point by 1/2 inch as well. I'm also going to drop the neck by 1/2 inch just to make the front neck a little bit wider, and then I'm just going to true up those seam lines, and then we're going to cut it out. You'll see I've created a front yoke as well by just cutting down a seam. I think it's about 3 inches from the front neck, and I'm just labelling that as the front yoke, adding on 1/2 inch seam allowance, as you can see here, and making sure that I put the seam allowance all the way around. I've gone with 1/2 inch just because it's easy, but obviously you can put whatever seam allowance you desire on. That's the whole thing about making your own like this. I've obviously not put a seam allowance at the front centre front even, because that's going to be on the fold. I'm now manipulating the dart, so I'm removing the side dart, and then I am also removing the waist dart, and I'm increasing the diameter of the front bodice part so that I can create gathering into that front yoke. So I'm just doing that here. I'm just opening that up a little bit more, look, just to try and create some extra room at the front, so I can, yeah, create a gathered front bodice piece. And then I'm just going to fill in that space there and add in seam allowance again. You'll see that you probably noticed me checking that with my first iteration of this pattern that I made, because obviously I'm doing it again to show you guys. And yeah, I'm just using it to make sure that I do everything I need to do to get this bodice to work, because as I explained at the beginning, this is the first time I've actually done anything like this, so it's a bit of an experiment. So I'm going ahead here and adding on seam allowances as well, because we need to do that. And I'm adding on extra length at the bottom, as you can see, because the first iteration that you've seen was far too short, and I want to make sure this is a little bit longer. So I've added on a few inches more to the bottom of this front bodice, and then I'm just marking it up so that I know what's what. And then we come to the back bodice, which is going to be a little bit easier. So again, I'm just tracing off my bodice sloper here, marking in the waist dart, and then I am just doing the same as I did with the front. I am raising up the shoulder slope by 1/2 inch to give me a little bit of extra room. I'm adding on 1/2 inch ease to the side seams of the bodice. I don't know if you saw me do that to the front bodice, but I did do that before I added on the seam allowance. And then I am now just adding a notch there, which is where I am going to have my keyhole detail at the back come to make sure that I can get this bodice on over my head. So I'm just truing up the side seams of the front and the back bodice here to make sure that they look okay and that they're the right length. I'm just marking that in as well. I'm also just checking the shoulder seams that they look okay together as well when they're going to be joined up. And I also dropped the arm side by 1/4 inch as well, just to give me a little bit of extra room at the armhole edge. And I'm just measuring the neckline now so that I can figure out how much of length I need for a neckband. And yeah, here we are. Here is the neckband that I have created. I don't know if you can hear my washing machine in the background. I'm really sorry about that, guys, but you know, this is real life where we have to still do washing on our days off, as well as filming voiceovers for YouTube vlogs. So I have just temporarily put my front and back bodice together so I can measure the armhole where I want my ruffled sleeves to be, so I can measure that length. And then what I'll do is I'll create a ruffle, which is going to be the length and a half of the armhole, and it's going to be 2 inches up, and then I'll just use my French curve just to curve it, as you can see here. And then I'm going to cut 4 of those when I actually cut out the fabric, so I can face them, double face them, so we get that nice neat finish. Added on the seam allowance, and there we've got the ruffle piece for the arms. So here is the fabric that I am using today to make my second version of this top, and as you can see, I am cutting out my lower front bodice and the back bodice. Obviously the lower front bodice is cut out on the fold, and the back bodice is cut in 2 separate pieces. This fabric I picked up from a swap table at the Iso Sews social. I'm cutting out my front yoke here. I want 2 of those, and you can see I've only got scraps, so I'm just trying to make this work the best way that I can, which is always interesting when you don't have a lot of fabric to work with. But fortunately this fabric isn't directional, which is very helpful. So I'm cutting out the neckband on the bias here, and then I'm going to be cutting out the ruffle, which I just cut 1 of. I know that I labelled it 2, but actually I only needed 1 because I'm folding it in half later. And then the arm, little caps, ruffly caps, sleeves, whatever you want to call them. So let's go to our sewing machine and get this sewn up. So how I started with this was that I gathered up the lower front bodice, and then I attached the front yoke right sides together, and I'm going to burrito this, which is what you'll see. You'll see that I'm just pinning it together at the moment, and I'm really sorry that my head is in the way for a lot of this, but you know, I'm not that great at filming these kind of tutorials. And I have you actually balanced on my ironing board, and there we go. So next up, I am overlocking the centre back seam of the back bodice pieces, as you can see there, just before I join them together. And then once they're joined together, I can just finish off the little seam of the back neckline slit so that I'm able to get this on over my head. Just come to the sewing machine. Oh, we're in real time now, which is a bit easier for voiceover. Honestly, I feel like I'm racing ahead. But anyway, I'm just pressing the centre back seam, and oh, we're back on fast forward now. I am just stitching the neckline, as you can see, at the back. And then what I'm going to do now is I am going to attach the shoulders of the front and back bodice together, keeping one of the yokes out of the way, the one on the inside, because then I'm going to burrito it, as you can see here, and then we can join the inside yoke to the outer yoke so that those raw seams of the shoulders are encased. I always love this bit. It's like magic when you can unroll it all like a big sausage and you've got gorgeous seams. So I'm just giving everything a press now, and yeah, this fabric is a cotton lawn. What we're doing now, we are working on the ruffle, I believe, and I am just stay stitching around the neckline, those 2 inner yokes together, and then I am going to just stitch the ends of the ruffle together, right sides together, just poke those out with my little pokey thing, and then I am going to gather up this ruffle, and then we will just pin it to the neckline, right sides together. So this is what we're doing now, pinning it all together, and I'm sort of running out of things to say to you at the minute because you can see what I'm doing. But anyway, it's all good fun doing this. So once we've got this pinned and the gathers nicely distributed, we can then stitch it to the neckline. Oops, don't know what happened there, but anyway, stitch it to the neckline, and then we will be adding on the neckband to encase those raw seams on the inside. That's going to be our next bit. So I'm sorry you can't really see me sewing this, but you get the idea. So, oops, there we go. A little bit of blocking off the camera action there. And yes, you can't really see what I'm doing, can you? But what are we doing here? We are, yeah, just making sure that I've not got the ruffle caught, and I'm just trimming down the seam line there. And what I'm doing now is just creating a little rouleau loop, because we're going to need that for the button fastening. So I'm just stitching that, and I just cut a 2-inch piece of fabric and then make a little sort of bias binding out of it, and then fold it over and stitch it to the back neckline, making sure that we stitch it below where the seam is going to be sewn, because you want it to be able to not be caught in the seam, which I think I actually did that when I did this and I had to unpick it, but you'll probably see that in a minute because I'm not going to edit that out because this is real life. And these are the trials and tribulations of a real life sewist who makes mistakes. So what we're doing now, I think, is we are stitching the neckband, which again is a 2-inch neckband created into bias binding. And yeah, there you go. You can see me unpicking because I realised that I didn't put the rouleau loop in the right place. So I had to unpick it and restitch it. And yeah, put it in the right place, Rachel. It's always going to help, isn't it? You don't want it stuck in the seam. But you know, doing this kind of thing, you learn so much because, you know, when you draft your own, you don't get instructions on how to put it together. You just have to sort of figure it out yourself. There's no instructions there that tell you to make sure that you put a little marking that is, you know, 1/2 inch below where you want to sew it. So you just end up sewing it where you think it looks okay and hoping for the best, really. But anyway. So we've got the neckband on now, the little ruffle neckline, and I quite like that. I think that looks pretty good. So we're moving on to the arm floopy things, whatever you want to call them, the little ruffle sleeves. And I am sewing the arm ruffles right sides together, that's the word. And then I'm just cutting into the curve so that when I turn it out the right way, it's going to sit nice and flat. And then I will understitch because that's important so that the wrong side doesn't flip out. It always helps, I find. And then I'm just going to press those together, as you can see, with that lovely understitching. And then we will gather up the raw edges together so that we can create a little bit of gathering, not too much because I don't want them too gathered, because these are two pieces of fabric of cotton lawn and I don't want them too sort of stuck out like some kind of Star Trek villain or something, because that would be wrong. That wouldn't look cool, and it's not the kind of look I'm going for with this top. So now I am just deciding how much of the gathering I want and whereabouts I am going to attach these to the arm side. Again, I'm doing it right sides together. I did create some little notches, but I failed to realise that actually once these little ruffly sleeve things were ruffled up, they'd actually be shorter than they are when they're not ruffled. So I should have made them the diameter plus 1/2 like I did with the ruffle for the neckline, and I didn't do that. So, you know, I've had to just fit it as I think it's going to look okay and hope for the best, really. But anyway, I'm pinning it onto the arm side, right sides together, and now we're stitching those in place. And we're going to do the same on the other arm side. And yeah, what are we doing here? What are we doing here, Rachel? Your shoulder's in the way. And then I am just overlocking those seams that I've just sewn because they're going to be exposed on the inside. And then now we can stitch the side seams together, which is really exciting, seeing this top finally coming together. So we'll stitch the side seams at 1/2 inch seam allowance, and then we've got a top. This is so exciting. So here I am creating some more binding. This is just going to bind the part of the arm side right at the bottom that still has a raw seam. So this is where the ruffly bit is not attached to. And yeah, I'm just creating a little bit of a bound edge to the base of the arm side, and we'll stitch those in place. And yeah, it's a little bit awkward, but especially when you can't see what I'm doing because my mad hair. Why is it with hair? You know, when I'm doing my hair in the mirror, it always looks really nice from the sides, and then when you see it from the back, it just looks like the birds are nesting in it. Yeah. Anyway, you've got a really nice shot of the back of my floofy hair here, which I'm sure you wanted to see. And I'm wearing my Duran Duran t-shirt that I got when I went to the concert last year, if you hadn't already realised that. because I don't always wear me-made, you know, especially when I'm sewing. But yeah, I like to be in my comfies when I'm sewing. So we are finishing off these arm size now. I think I'm just working on the other side now, and yeah, getting rid of all the little loose threads that are there, making sure everything looks nice and neat. And I am now just trying to thread a needle, which is always interesting, because we're going to stitch a button on to the back neckline. And yeah, this was a little bit hard to do actually, because there's quite a few layers of fabric at this point, and I couldn't find a needle that was strong enough to get through all those layers of fabric that was still sharp enough, but we got there in the end. So we're stitching on a button so that I'm able to fasten it together. And the last bit we need to do is just hem the bottom of this top. So all I did for this was fold it up by 1/4 of an inch and then fold it up by another 1/4 of an inch. It was quite a small seam really, because I wanted to keep as much of that length as possible. And then I'll just stitch this with my edge stitching foot, and there we have it, we're done. So here is the finished top, and the only other change I made to this one was to lengthen it, so it is actually about 2 inches longer than the other one. I am super happy with it. I think it's absolutely gorgeous. This fabric, as I say, was a remnant that I picked up from Izoso's social, which I went to back in January. She had a fabric and pattern swap table, and this was just on there as a little meter remnant, and I am incredibly happy with how both tops have turned out. You know, considering the first one that I showed you at the start of this video was just made out of an old duvet, and then this one was just from a remnant that I picked up from a social. I just think they're both so really cute, and I think they'll just be perfect in summer. I want to show you the back of this top because the pattern matching, it's got a centre back seam, hopefully you can see there, and the pattern matching is absolutely on point. And I have to say that was completely coincidental. I didn't try it at all because I didn't have enough to, so it just worked out that way. But I love it. I love the darker blue. I can see myself just making loads more variations of this kind of top that I can wear for summer. I will still wear the other version as well, even though it's out of a duvet. And it is quite short. I think with high-waisted shorts in summer, it's just going to look really cute. So yeah, that's my So Frugal 23 makes. But I am really pleased that I have actually taken that next step with my body sloper and started just playing about with dart manipulation and adding ease and cutting apart the pattern to create design lines and different features, etc., and just having a go and being brave. I think that's what it's all about, isn't it? And I think something like So Frugal, where you can choose thrifted fabrics or, you know, use an old duvet, that kind of thing, it just gives you that confidence to have a go at trying out something like this where you don't know if it's going to work, but you're not cutting into precious fabric. And I'm really pleased with how this has come out, and it's given me so much more confidence to carry on designing my own patterns from my own bodice sloper. I'm still going to be making patterns by other designers as well, because I can't see that I'm always going to just want to sew from my bodice sloper forevermore, but it's certainly something that I'm going to start playing with a little bit more, and I'm really looking forward to that. So I hope you've enjoyed my contribution to the So Frugal challenge this year, and I'd just like to thank Ruan and Sam for hosting, and also Alyssa for all the work that she's been doing with arranging all the prizes. So take care everybody, and I'll see you soon. Bye.